My name is Elena Vance. I'm 30 years old, and the day my father decided to celebrate throwing me out of his house, he did it like he was unveiling a grand opening. I pulled into the driveway to grab my last banker's box, and there it was, a giant vinyl banner stretched over the garage in aggressive blood-red block letters, "Goodbye, Freeloader, don't come back." The grill was smoking, the scent of cheap burgers filling the afternoon air. Country music was blasting so loud it vibrated in my steering wheel. People were laughing, clinking beer bottles like this was some kind of neighborhood holiday. From the patio, a drunk voice, my Uncle Dean, shouted that a 30-year-old woman with no real career should be ashamed for living off her parents for 3 years. Another voice yelled that my poor family had carried my dead weight long enough. Then something hit the passenger side of my car, a hot dog dripping with mustard. My sister Kelsey screamed, "There's your last free meal, loser!" Even the kids were pointing and giggling. I sat there, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight the leather groaned. My keys dug into my palm until it bled. And the strangest part? Nobody there thought they were lying. That was the story they'd told so often at church cookouts and on Facebook that they actually believed it. They were the heroes of a tough love story, and I was the villain. But they didn't know about the spreadsheets. They didn't know about the 3 a.m. wire transfers. They didn't know that the very grill they were using was paid for by the freeloader they were mocking. Before I tell you exactly how I dismantled their reality, I want you to do something. Look at the clock. Tell me what time it is where you are and where you're watching this from. I want to see how far the truth travels when the lie has already circled the globe. The version my family told everyone was simple, clean, and humiliating. It was the kind of story people love because it lets them feel superior. Elena, the 30-year-old drifter, the failed engagement, the girl who moved back into her childhood bedroom and supposedly spent all day playing on her little computer while her hardworking father, Richard Vance, broke his back to keep a roof over her head. That story played very well under Facebook posts where neighbors typed things like, "Tough love is the only way," or, "Maybe this will finally make her grow up." The truth? The truth was messier, quieter, and far more useful to them if nobody ever said it out loud. So I had moved back into my father's house 3 years ago, not because I failed, but because he was failing. Vance Signage Solutions, the company my grandfather started, was bleeding out. Supply costs had shot up 40%. 2 major commercial clients in Phoenix had filed for bankruptcy, leaving my father with $60,000 in unpaid receivables. The company that looked solid from the outside was surviving week to week on fumes and bluffing. My father did what he always did when things got ugly. He got louder. He blamed the lazy younger generation, he blamed the immigrants, he blamed the woke regulations, and eventually he blamed me. Never himself. The part he never mentioned to the neighbors? I was the reason the company hadn't collapsed 2 years ago. I didn't have the kind of job my family respected. In a house that only valued jobs that came with steel-toed boots, calloused hands, or a visible layer of sweat, my work was invisible. I worked remotely as a freelance bid coordinator and operations consultant. I spent my days organizing vendor packets, rewriting service scopes, and keeping documentation from falling apart for multi-million-dollar contracts. I was good at systems. I was good at seeing disasters before they happened. That made me valuable to strangers and a convenient ghost to my family. At first, helping my father was supposed to be temporary. The first month, I just reorganized his chaotic filing system. The second month, I caught a missed permit renewal that would have cost him a municipal account worth $20,000. Then, I found the rot. He wasn't remitting sales tax correctly. He had equipment leases auto-renewing at predatory rates. His bookkeeper had quit months prior, and my father was just guessing. Every time I fixed one thing, 2 more surfaced like black mold under drywall, but he never introduced me as the woman keeping his lights on. At dinner, when a client called and I spent 40 minutes de-escalating a disaster, he'd tell his friends, "My daughter is just figuring some things out right now, helping me with a few emails." When I covered a $4,000 payroll gap out of my own savings because he would rather die than admit to his installers that he was broke, he called it a loan. Later, he'd laugh and say, "Families don't keep score." No, Elena. Remember that sentence, families don't keep score, because people like my father only say that when they are the ones losing the game. For 3 years, I wasn't just paying for groceries, I was the secret bank of Vance Signage Solutions. I paid for the software subscriptions. I paid the overdue utility balances for the workshop. I paid the insurance reinstatement fees on the work vans when they were 48 hours away from being seized. I floated 3 separate vendor deposits that would have killed active projects if the checks had bounced. I never paid for everything all at once. That's how it stayed hidden. I just paid the difference. The shortfall, the amount needed to keep the machine from screaming loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. And yet, because I worked from a laptop in the kitchen, my father treated my labor as a hobby. He'd walk by and say, "Must be nice sitting in the AC all day," while I was literally on a call preventing a contract cancellation that would have cost him $11,000. He treated my competence like a household appliance, useful when needed, embarrassing when acknowledged. The rest of the family followed his lead. Contempt rolls downhill in a house like ours. My sister Kelsey learned that mocking me was the fastest way to get my father's approval. My Uncle Dean, who bounced between drinking and half-hearted sales work, used me as a shield for his own failures. What changed wasn't their opinion of me. What changed was that my father started making noise about selling the house and downsizing. He actually believed his own myth. He thought he had carried me. He thought because I didn't send him an invoice every month, my labor was worth 0. He truly believed that if I left, the only thing he'd lose was the inconvenience of seeing me in his kitchen. Then came that Friday night. I was in the kitchen, late, finishing a bid for a regional hospital. I heard them in the backyard, my father, Dean, and a neighbor. My father's voice was booming, fueled by his 3rd beer. "I'm thinking of giving Elena 90 days, he said. "Maybe hitting rock bottom will finally make a woman out of her. I can't enable her forever." They laughed. Kelsey laughed too. That was the moment the hurt stopped and the clarity began. I didn't storm out. I didn't cry. I opened a new folder on my computer. I titled it, "The Cost of Contempt." People think revenge begins with anger. Mine began with a spreadsheet. I began documenting everything. Not just the money, but the dependency. I made a timeline going back 30 months, every rush payment, every permit fee, every fuel card transfer I'd authorized from my personal account, every invoice I'd corrected before a client rejected it. I realized that if you included the unpaid labor, the hundreds of hours of administrative crisis management, the support I had given the company alone had crossed $112,000. Personal family support pushed it even higher. My sister's rent that she forgot to pay back? On the list. My uncle's emergency $500 to keep his personal car from being repossessed? On the list. The real figure was grotesque. I had been the silent foundation of a house that was built on the premise that I was useless. I got an offer from a client in Colorado, a long-term contract, stability. I signed it, put a deposit on a 1-bedroom apartment outside Denver, and told no one. For 2 weeks I moved out in batches. Winter clothes, books, the expensive dual monitor setup my father thought had appeared by magic. When you grow up in a family where every boundary is a debate, secrecy feels like oxygen. My father beat me to the eviction speech by 6 days. He cornered me on a Tuesday morning. He had that tough love smirk on his face. He told me I needed a wake-up call. He said he was embarrassed when clients saw my car in the driveway during the day. I asked him one question. "Do you want me gone? Or do you want an audience when I leave?" He laughed. "Maybe both." He gave me until Saturday to clear out. He expected a fight. He expected me to beg. Instead, I just nodded. On Friday night, I did the final maintenance. I closed the auto-pay backups tied to my cards. I removed my credit card from the vendor portals. I notified one major supplier that future emergency orders would now require management approval. Knowing full well my father didn't even have the login credentials, I forwarded 2 overdue invoice drafts to clients exactly as my father had requested. But this time I didn't clean them up. I didn't rewrite them into professional English. I sent them exactly as he had dictated. A aggressive, misspelled, and arrogant. You'd be amazed how quickly respect evaporates when people have to hear a man without his translator. Then came Saturday. The BBQ from hell, the banner, the hot dog, the laughter. I picked up that last box, the one Kelsey had labeled starter kit with ramen and trash bags, and I walked to my car. I took the photo. My father shouted, "Collecting evidence for your therapist?" I looked him dead in the eye. "No," I said. "For later." I drove away. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I knew what was coming. Silence is a terrifying thing when people are used to your labor arriving on demand. The first 3 days, my phone was dead silent. They thought they had won. They mistook my absence for surrender. Then Monday afternoon arrived. The first crack in the Vance Empire appeared. A municipal client rejected a permit resubmission. Normally, I would have caught the notice, called the broker, and fixed it in an hour. This time, the email sat in an inbox my father hadn't checked in years. Tuesday, the project management software went dark. My backup card was gone, and my father's primary card declined. Suddenly, all his work orders, install dates, and measurements vanished. Uncle Dean called 3 times. I didn't answer. Wednesday morning, the power company left a shut-off warning on the workshop door. My father called me at 7:12 a.m. His voice had lost the boss of the grill swagger. He sounded like a man who had just found a snake in his bed. "Elena, sweetheart," he said, "call me back. There's some confusion with the utility account. I think your card was still linked somehow. Let's straighten it out." Confusion. I almost admired the audacity. By Friday, the messages changed. My sister Kelsey called, crying. The med spa where she worked had cut her hours. She needed $600 for rent. Dad had promised to help her, but cash flow was weird. She told me, "Don't make this into a thing, Elena. Just help me out. Don't make this into a thing." That was the family motto. Don't make it a thing when we hurt you. Only make it a thing when you stop letting us. I sent her a single screenshot of the spreadsheet showing 3 months of her unpaid rent that I had already covered. I wrote, "Since you're interested in contribution, talk to Dad." That evening, the text I had been waiting for finally arrived. My father, Richard Vance, the man who had hung a banner calling me a freeloader, sent 3 words, "Talk now, please." I stared at the screen in my quiet, beautiful new apartment in Colorado. I felt the weight of 3 years of silence finally lifting. I replied, "Tomorrow, noon, a public place." The silence of a new apartment is different from the silence of a house where you're being ignored. In Colorado, the silence felt like a clean sheet of paper. In my father's house, it had felt like a suffocating blanket. But while I was breathing in the mountain air, the vacuum I left behind in Phoenix was starting to implode. You see, when you are the hidden support beam in a toxic family, nobody notices you until the roof starts to sag. And boy, was it sagging. Thursday morning, my phone lit up with a voicemail from Uncle Dean. He wasn't slurring this time, which meant he was actually scared. Elena, he corrected himself, his voice shaking. "Listen, the vendor account for the vinyl supplier is locked. They're demanding a $5,000 deposit to release the materials for the hospital job. Your father is losing his mind. He says you changed the passwords. Just give us the login, okay? Don't be like this." I didn't change the passwords. I just stopped paying the subscription for the password manager that held them. I didn't lock the account. The supplier locked it because the backup card was no longer there to cover my father's bounced check. I listened to the message twice and then deleted it. The freeloader was busy. I was currently reviewing a contract for a new client that would pay me more in 6 months than my father had given me in 3 years. Then came the Friday of the great collapse. Kelsey called 6 times in an hour. When I finally picked up, she didn't even say hello. She just started screaming, "Are you happy now? Dad is in the workshop throwing chairs. Grandma is crying because he missed the mortgage payment on the house. He told her it's your fault because you stole the company's operating funds. Why are you doing this to us?" I waited for her to run out of breath. The familiar sting of being the family scapegoat tried to rise up in my throat, but I swallowed it. Kelsey, I said, my voice as flat as a dial tone. I didn't steal a dime, I just stopped giving him mine. If the house is at risk because I stopped paying the difference, then it wasn't his house to begin with. It was mine. I just didn't have the deed. She hung up on me. But an hour later, the text came from my father. Talk now, please. I knew what that please cost him. It was a currency he hated using. We met Monday at a diner off the interstate, a place with cracked vinyl booths and the smell of burnt coffee, a neutral territory where neither of us had a home field advantage. I arrived first. I sat in a booth near the back, my 31-page packet sitting on the table like a loaded weapon. My father walked in 5 minutes late, looking like a man who had aged 10 years in 10 days. His eyes were bloodshot. His boss of the grill apron was gone, replaced by a stained work shirt. Uncle Dean was trailing behind him like a nervous shadow. They sat down. Neither of them ordered food. So, my father started, trying to find his old booming authority and failing. You've had your fun. You've shown us how important you are. Now, tell me what you did to the accounts so we can get back to work. I didn't say a word. I just slid the packet across the table. He looked at the cover sheet. Vance Signage Solutions. Operational Support Summary. 30 months. He opened it, expecting a few scribbled notes. Instead, he found a forensic audit. Page 1. The total. $112,400. His eyes snapped up to mine. This is a joke. You're making things up. Flip the page, Dad, I said quietly. He flipped. Page 2 was a list of every utility bill I had paid for the workshop. Page 3 was a list of every material deposit I had floated on my personal card. Page 4 was a log of every hour of unpaid administrative labor, billed at the market rate I charge my actual clients. Page 5 was the most brutal, a collection of his own text messages. Elena, can you just handle the city permit fee? I'm short this week. Elena, just put the insurance on your card. I'll square you up Friday. He never did. Elena, don't tell your grandmother we're tight. Just make it work. Uncle Dean leaned over, seeing the numbers, and whispered, Jesus, Richard, did she really pay for the van repairs in June? My father's face turned a deep, bruised purple. Families help each other, Elena. That's what you don't get. You lived under my roof. I fed you. I reached into the packet and pulled out the photo I took the day I left, the banner, the goodbye Freeloader sign. You didn't feed me, Dad, I said, and for the first time, my voice trembled with a power I didn't know I had. I bought the groceries. I paid the software that ran your business. I even paid for the meat on that grill the day you threw me out. You invited the whole neighborhood to watch you humiliate the person who was keeping you out of bankruptcy. I leaned in closer, ignoring the stares of the truckers in the next booth. You called me a freeloader because it made you feel like a big man, but the truth is, you were the one living off me. You, Dean, Kelsey, you all treated my competence like a household appliance. You liked the light it provided, but you hated acknowledging the cord. The silence that followed was heavy. My father grabbed the packet, his hands shaking. I'll sue you for sabotage, he hissed. Go ahead, I replied. The second half of that packet contains every tax filing you signed that was factually incorrect before I fixed it. It contains evidence of the equipment leases you defaulted on. If we go to court, the discovery process will finish what your ego started. You'll lose the company and the house in the first week. Dean looked like he wanted to bolt for the door. My father just stared at the total on the front page. The $112,400. What do you want? He asked, his voice cracking. Money? I don't have it. You know that now. I don't want your money, Dad, I said. I want you to understand that I am not your safety net. I am not your secretary, and I am certainly not your freeloader. I am a business owner who happened to love her family enough to bankrupt herself for them, and today, that business is closed to you. I stood up. If you walk out that door, my father said, trying one last time to use the guilt card, this family is dead. Is that what you want? To be an orphan? I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized that the man in front of me was a stranger who shared my DNA. I was already an orphan in that house, Dad. I was just a ghost who paid the bills. I walked out. The collapse didn't happen all at once. It came in installments, just like I had predicted. A month later, the house in Phoenix went on the market. Not a downsizing, but a forced sale. My grandmother moved into a small apartment paid for by a cousin. Uncle Dean disappeared into another bender. My father moved into a rental near the industrial park. He tried to keep the company going. But without a translator to fix his emails and a bid coordinator to win his contracts, he was just a loud man with a sign truck he couldn't afford to fuel. Kelsey was the only one who reached out with the truth. She came to Colorado in the late summer. She sat on my balcony looking at the mountains and admitted she had known. "I was scared, Elena," she whispered. "Dad was so angry all the time, and when he pointed that anger at you, the rest of us felt safe. We used you as a lightning rod. I'm so sorry about the banner. I helped him hang it because I didn't want him to look at me that way." It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was honest. And in my family, honesty was a miracle. 5 months after the diner, a small envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Inside was a single yellowed recipe card. My mother's chicken pot pie. At the bottom, in her neat cursive, it said, "Add 10 more minutes if Richard is complaining. He likes it crispier than he admits." I sat on my floor and cried for the first time since I'd left. Not because I missed the house, but because the recipe was a reminder of a woman who had also spent her life managing a man who didn't deserve her. I didn't go back for the house sale. I didn't go back for the holidays. I built a new life. One with real contracts, real boundaries, and a Subaru I paid for in cash. I learned that family isn't a debt you pay. It's a relationship you earn. People still ask me if I regret that photo. The one of the banner. I tell them no. Because that photo is the only thing that reminds me of who I used to be. A woman who mistook being used for being loved. My father called me one last time on New Year's Eve. He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask for help. He just asked, "Did you really hate us that much?" I told him, "No, Dad. I just finally loved myself more." I hung up. I looked at the mountains. And for the first time in 30 years, the silence didn't feel like a secret. It felt like a victory.